Puerto Rico, Cuba, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Venezuela, El Salvador, Mexico, Honduras, Peru. Help me because I can't keep up with so many flags. Welcome to all. Let's go. Don't stop. How beautiful. There I see the Argentinian flag as well. Venezuela, Ecuador, Colombia, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, Peru, Dominican Republic. I already said yes. Let's go. Don't stop. Colombia, of course. Let's go. Chile. How beautiful. Bolivia, Uruguay. We're happy. Look how great. The joy of us transmitting live to all those marvelous people that connect with us Sunday after Sunday. It's a pleasure. Many repercussions from last Sunday's sermon, the church that ashames us because some had hopes that I would attack the church or touch certain people or men of God, which I've never done, and I won't start doing it now. The day I start doing that, you can solicit my resignation. God never gave me favor or let me the ears of people to speak against anyone. It was more of a defense that the church will always shame us. It'll shame us at a certain point because it'll touch our pride, our ego, because we're broken people. We're people in repair. We have to remove the habits of saying, oh, they don't represent me. They write to me from time to time saying, Dante, you stopped representing me. And I ask, when the heck did I ever represent you? When did you ever hire me so that I could represent you? I don't even represent myself. How can I represent others? The truth is that I recommend that you listen to the sermon, The Church That Ashames Us, if you can. Last Sunday we went live on air, and it's still there on our official website. Very well. 2 quick things, and then I'll transmit what I believe God told me to tell you. The first, from least important to most important. The least important thing, but it's not a minor detail. You know that I spend 1 week here and another week in Argentina, and this will be true until the tour ends. And sometimes this demands 12, 15, 17 hours of flight while we wait, and then internal planes that take me to each province of Argentina. We've visited 63 cities around the world on this tour that we've been on for 3 years, and God willing, it'll end this year in December. However, I was in 2 provinces of Argentina that are waiting to see themselves, my fellow patriots. One province is Santa Fe, marvelous place, and then the other is Entre Rios or Paraná. That is where my father was born and raised. So I was able to go to these 2 marvelous provinces. This is very short, and then something very important, but this is short so that the people that were present, and we interviewed some of them, they can see themselves, and also to show all of you that are always praying for my health, you sustain me, so that God can conserve my voice, my mind, my physique. So this is Presidente, and yes, of course, because so much traveling, at some point, I could collapse, but I always have a supernatural strength, and that's the mantle of protection from the church that helps me. So I am profoundly grateful to you. This is Presidente, Santa Fe, and Paraná.
Estoy muy expectante, muy alegre, contento de poder estar en este nuevo evento de Dante.
Era un sueño y hoy es un sueño cumplido estar acá.
Teníamos muchas ganas de venir a verte, estamos súper emocionadas y vinimos desde Sunchales.
Las 5 cosas que dijiste fueron impresionantes. Para mí hoy es un antes y después.
Mucho para aprender, para aplicar a nuestra vida.
A mí me pareció increíble, me encantó, me emocionó mucho, lloré.
Todo salió tan lindo que no me da ganas de irme.
Hoy venir con nuestros hijos, ya que te seguimos de nuestra adolescencia, y la verdad es una alegría enorme tenerte acá en Entre Ríos.
Acá como familia estamos muy emocionados y expectantes de lo que vamos a ver hoy.
Me sorprendió
bastante, me hizo reír, me hizo llorar, me encantó. 10 de 10 a Dante Gebel.
Bueno, la verdad que nos vamos muy felices. El show que da es tremendo y la verdad que te cambia la vida.
Que dejó un mensaje muy lindo que bueno, que es muy valioso para nosotros, así que estamos muy contentos de este día, no lo vamos a olvidar nunca y agradecemos a Dante por haber venido a esta linda ciudad.
Thanks to Paraná and Santa Fe. Always. Thank you for accompanying us on this show. It's a 2.5-hour show on each stage, and we've been around the world already, almost the entire world. We've been in Europe, Spain, Barcelona, Madrid, New York, at Radio City, and then at the Movistar arenas in Bogota, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, and God has blessed us so much, and I know that is also because of you backing us. Thanks for your prayers, and also thanks for those that went. In a week, if I'm not mistaken, we'll be in San Juan and Mendoza, 2 other marvelous provinces, and so we wait for you there. In India, we have a home, one of the most beautiful orphanages, where we were able to begin to sow. Years ago, we were able to do many things with them, but fundamentally, we were able to give them tools to continue on, because it's not just about feeding them and sustaining them for life. We give them tools, we help them out. We have very good pastors there that began this work at the Kumar family that we send an enormous greeting to. This is your seed, and then after this I'll transmit what I believe God told me to tell you, but this is where our offering goes. We are River India.
We are so happy to introduce this River Tech room. This is where the kids get to learn a lot of skills, which helps them in their future, especially in India. We teach them about the plumbing, the electricals, the electronics. It will be a skill development program for them.
The benefit will be that for those who learn this work, there will always be opportunities to stand firm and survive, no matter where they go.
This room is meant for river sewing room, and they can earn money by sewing. They can sew their own clothes. These are stitched by our home kids. This is the one design. This is another one. To look more beautiful, they added some laces and the buttons.
Learning to sew is important, not just for education, but because it's a means of livelihood. In the future, they will be able to use this skill to earn money and be independent.
Today we have 24 computers. Before, we could only use a laptop once a week or even once a month, and it was very difficult to learn that way. But thanks to the people from River, each one of us now has a laptop, which really helps with daily learning. If we learn this now, it will help us find a good job in the future, because it will give us basic knowledge of technology.
What you are seeing is the new playground which Riva has constructed with synthetic flooring and EPDM rubber flooring. This is one of its kind. You have changed the kids' lives a lot. You have changed the way kids are thinking now, the way kids are living now, the way kids are eating now. This is all because of you. Thank you so much. May God bless you.
That is your seed. Thank you. Thank you for sowing. Thank you for giving. And that applause is for those that are on the other side that also sow and send us their offering from all over the world. So much can be done, and we're just a humble congregation of Hispanic people. We're not even all American or multimillionaires. We're not the state nor the government. But you know what we've been able to do in Uganda, what we're doing in India, what we're doing in Cuba. We've already built 12 homes that we'll be showing you as time goes on. So much can be done. Of course, maybe you can't change the entire nation, but little by little with small seeds, you can change the culture, the cultural heritage of an entire nation, of an underdeveloped country. And fundamentally, if we feel like helping and sowing, then that's a blessing. So I'm sorry for being so monothematic and repetitive, but I'll never grow tired of repeating while God gives me life. Thanks for your seed. Thanks for sowing. Thank you so much. Thank you in the name of the Lord for sowing. Very well. Are we ready, people? Yes or no? I once shared with you that I knew a certain woman that I worked with. Every morning, she would come to the office with a frown. It's as if on her forehead she had a no written. Even before anyone asked the question, there are people like this that put on their makeup, they wash their face, they brush their teeth, and then they slap a no on their forehead. So whenever you go up to them to ask them something, it's always a no. There are people that make negativism their flag. And she always tried to make things difficult for others. If somebody came to charge for a job, she would make them wait for hours, or she would make them fill out eternal forms, bureaucratic forms. And she would justify herself by saying, well, no, I don't want people to get used to things being made easy. It wasn't even her money that she was collecting, but it's as if she managed it in that way. She was irascible, furious, angry, and very, very hostile. And although all this made up her emotional blind spot, she self-perceived herself as a very professional and fair woman. She never said, oh, I'm always in a bad mood. No, she would say, I'm very fair and just, I'm very professional. But as I got to know her more and more, I realized that she had gone through a very rough and miserable childhood. It was very gloomy and sad. And as she would tell the stories of the rejection that she had suffered as a little girl, either from her parents in abandonment, I began to understand and have empathy that her attitude was the reflection of all those wounds from the past. And not being able to heal all those abuses, all that she suffered as a little girl, that had made her an adult woman that was very mean and cunning, but it had to do with those abuses or those problems that were deep-rooted in her childhood. I always say, and I remember, that many psychologists have debated between the theory that our adult life is determined by our genes. The genes that travel through our veins, and we can't do anything about it. It just travels through our DNA. While other psychologists affirm that our behavior has nothing to do with our genes, that you can change your story, the story of your bloodline. They say that it has more to do with the environment in which we were brought up. The truth is that all adults were molded by what we've lived through as children. And our strengths and our weaknesses will always be influenced by that first environment. Yes, sir, yes. And so all the dysfunctions in our adult lives have been molded, a priori, or influenced in our childhood. And our wounds from our childhood, whether whether they be aggressive, passive, they always come with an encrypted message. So, the reaction to that message that is contained in the wound determines our personality and our way of facing life. And the woman that I'm telling you about in the example, I'm not trying to criticize, because I ended up feeling affection for her. I understood why she acted that way. That's not an isolated case. There's millions of us that are carrying the remains of the pain caused in our childhood. There are those that sustain that you shouldn't sift through the past, that with the Lord all things are made new. But I am one of the people that believes that if you're not able to heal those wounds, then they will accompany us even in our Christian pilgrimage. And as a result of that unprocessed pain, sometimes we act in a way that also damages our relationships in our adult life. For example, maybe there are people here that can get offended very easily. Maybe we get offended very easily. Or maybe we're very sensitive, extremely sensitive, disproportionately sensitive. Or maybe we are explosive. Or maybe we hide. Or maybe we're evasive. Sullen. I'm talking about our adult lives. Or we react and detonate in a gigantic way because of a small problem. Or maybe we're going through life trying to earn the validation and affection that we couldn't find in our childhood homes, and we're always seeking out words of affirmation. And the worst part is that it terrifies us to think that we could possibly repeat, or maybe we are repeating, that vicious cycle with our own children. We criticize our upbringing so much that, without even wanting, we may be repeating the same ecosystem. A wounded adult always hurts others. Under any circumstance, a hurt adult hurts others. Whoever bleeds stains. A healed adult always heals. It's a pleasure to speak with a healed adult. I'm not talking about an adult that didn't have problems. I'm talking about an adult that had problems but then healed. Now, let's agree that all of us that are here and those that are watching from home, we all wanted our parents to love us, for them to be proud of us. In the case that we had our parents, we seek approval, consent, and the affirmation of those that raised us. And so when a child doesn't receive this on behalf of their parents, they end up becoming adults with numerous subterraneous problems and traumas. When I speak about trauma, we immediately self-reflect and say, no, I'm not crazy. No, I'm not traumatized. No. When I speak about traumas, these are subterraneous problems that I insist make us act in a certain way without us even noticing. We don't even know why we act that way. And in the vain attempt to not want to sift through our past, we stop others, or we don't help others to heal. So if we don't recognize that we were hurt, that we have subterraneous traumas, then we won't be able to heal our children either. We won't be able to be an agent of blessing to others. Ergo, we'll never be a healthy person. No, we're going to be someone that hurts unconsciously. With the first part of this message, which I preached 2 years ago, I told you that under the rose comes from a Latin expression which means sub rosa. The term has a connotation of secrecy and confidentiality. Something that is done sub rosa should not be repeated, nor should it be spread. And this link of being under the rose, under confidentiality, it goes back to ancient days. The Romans and the Greeks began to use the rose, something that is very beautiful, at least in an aesthetic way, as a symbol of silence. And secret meetings were literally carried out under a rose, a gigantic rose painted on the ceiling. When the Templar Knights would enter a room, the roses painted on the ceilings were reminders to the guests that they should keep discretion of anything that should happen or anything that should be said within that meeting. In fact, the popular phrase of whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Do you know it? Yeah. Well, it was part of a publicity campaign to promote tourism in the city of Nevada. It was a way to say, you could be unfaithful in Las Vegas, then no one will find out. You can play whatever you want. You can sleep with whoever you want. it will not leave Las Vegas. It was a publicity campaign. Whatever's done in Las Vegas stays in Vegas. But creators, publicists, base themselves off of this Templar phrase. Whatever happens under the rose stays under the rose. So sitting under a gigantic rose painted on the ceiling represented an obligation, even contractual obligation, of absolute silence and confidentiality. But the sordid thing about the case is that in the medieval times, the feudal lords, some pedophiles, tended to place a rose hanging on the doorknob right outside their bedrooms, almost like the do not disturb sign in hotels. If the rose was hanging off of the doorknob, it meant that even if the guards heard shouts from a child or a little girl within the room, they shouldn't nor could they intervene, because whatever was happening inside there was happening under the rose. And so under the rose also means hiding the fright and pain under something that is apparently and supposedly beautiful. Under the rose is when those pains were hidden under your childhood. What should have been a season of absolute innocence. Now, we're all not aware of what happened to us under the rose. We tend to say, oh, I remember my childhood. But in reality, neurologists say that we remember less than 2% of all that we've lived. No one has so many available gigabytes, so many mental engrams to be able to remember all your infancy. We wouldn't be able to think or reason because our brain would be overworked, overclocked like a computer that has too much information. So the majority of the events in our childhood are getting lost in our subconscious, and from that 2%, our brain has a resource, which is to edit all the bad parts to be able to survive. It's a gift from God. We tend to forget the bad things, which doesn't mean that it's induced amnesia. It doesn't necessarily, it means, it can mean healing. It doesn't have to mean healing. Just because we don't remember it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Sometimes we act subconsciously and we don't know why we act like this. For example, I'm going to tell you something that I have never said before, publicly at least, but it's relevant. It adds to the line of the narrative. When my mother died in 2016, I loved my mother, always. I loved her profoundly. She was an actress. She was beautiful. She was a crazy maniac. She was controlling, manipulative, and a prophet, like the majority of mothers present here today. I loved her. But in 2016, my brother calls me and says, Mom passed away. I didn't cry, nor was I left in a shock. I didn't have any emotional response that was visible, which was surprising to me. You might say, oh, well, it's because she was old and you're already an adult. Yeah, but she's still a mother, still a father. That feeling of being an orphan, you can feel it at the age of 5, 10, or 50. I remember that on that Thursday when my mother passed away, I recorded many TV programs. That was my routine for that day of the week. I had a contract with TV Azteca, and I think I recorded about 5 or 6 programs as if nothing happened. I smiled or interviewed people. I did my monologues, whatever I had to do. But from that moment on, I tried to process the reasons as to why I couldn't mourn in a normal way, or in a way that you might expect. Why was I unable to express my emotions? Investigators believe that many men are ill-equipped emotionally to the point that we not only battle to process our emotions, but we might not even understand what these emotions are. Sometimes it's tough to process. It's not that we don't have a soul or that we don't have feelings. It's just tough for us to process it. It's tough for us to go through these emotions. When I was younger, I always felt that I was alone. Always. They say that the orphanage that hurts the most is the one in your soul, because when your parents are underground, we have no other option. We're orphans and that's it. But the worst is when we feel like orphans and our parents are taking their naps on the other side of the wall and you feel disconnected. I don't remember anyone telling me that they believed in me, or that they loved me, or that they were proud of me. I didn't have many qualities to make my parents proud. I was never a nerd. I never brought home good grades. But they never even said to me, oh, champion, winner, things that a child, especially a little boy, needs. And I always share that when I asked, Mom, did you guys want to have me? Did you plan me? No, we thought you were a tumor, my old woman said. A tumor? An accident. I don't even remember them hugging me. Now, I understand them. I came along as an accident. It was a night of uncontrolled revival from my father. He miscalculated. I don't know if they didn't see the calendar, but I don't know if the method was wrong. But of course, they didn't expect to give birth to me as my mother was 43 years old, so I'm not so naive to assure that they never embraced me. However, even when it happened, the fact that I can't remember it is very significant. Because if I could turn time back, I would say, oh yeah, they hugged me for my birthday. But of course, I never remember them celebrating my birthday. But I mean, oh yeah, they hugged me here. But why don't I remember it? That's not insignificant. It's not a minor detail. So there are many people here that also carry the pain of the wounds from their childhood, and it's very tough to express it because we don't tend to go to therapy, because some of us understand out of prejudice that going to therapy is on the border of lunacy, that you start with the therapist and end up with the psychiatrist. You say, oh, well, the Lord has healed me. And I believe you, but maybe your mother and your father were not present, just as it happened with me. Or maybe one of the two were irresponsible or distant, or they were always upset, and they mistreated you, or they were self-absorbed. And most likely that's all they knew, and that's all that they could do. They didn't do wrong on purpose. However, the result isn't always the same, and you never got over it. The majority of men and women that you're going to cross paths with today, nowadays, let this be clear, they all had mothers or fathers that failed them at some point. Statistics say that 80% of people across the entire globe come from dysfunctional families. 80. So 8 out of 10 people in your neighborhood, at your job, at your gym, within your church, they were also raised in dysfunctional homes. Especially a great part of my generation, maybe more, maybe less. I once read a communication about the Gulf War. Many years ago, the names were given of the young men and women that died accidentally at the hands of their own army. This is called the collateral damage in a war. It is said that they died innocently in the heat of the battle, innocently because they were shot or beaten down by their own companions that didn't recognize them. Maybe they didn't see them, and the reporter used a term that I had never heard before. He called it friendly fire. The soldiers that died under friendly fire. And I thought to myself, what was so friendly about that fire? Miss, they killed your son. Ah, but it was friendly. Oh, okay. And many of us have been hurt by the friendly fire from our own families. Friendly fire. I always share that one of my favorite places in all the world is a forest, some woods near my home. All the cypress trees and oak trees are bent and twisted. There's not one trunk that's completely straight. None of the trees are perfect. Not like those pine trees or those majestic trees that you see in films. But I think that humanity is like this grove that I visit. That although we try to keep our heads held high, none of us accomplish it. We bend, we twist. We're all a collection of twisted trunks. We're the brotherhood of the twisted trunks. I once preached about this. We're the brotherhood, the fraternity of the twisted trunk. Because we've all had dysfunctionality in our childhoods or in our families. And whether we want to believe it or not, the Bible prescribes a process of healing for the wounds of our childhood, which has been used in a constant and efficient way for thousands of years. Psychologists, psychiatrists, and counselors refine, they manage, and they replant the same biblical process that dates back to thousands of years ago. So I need to make it clear before I continue on that I'm not speaking to you as an upset adult. I'm not angry about my childhood, otherwise I wouldn't be able to heal. Remember, a hurt man hurts others, even if they don't want to. Only a healed man can heal or help to heal. I'm not giving this message, nor will I give it, from the anger of a child who became an angry adult and never adequately processed that anger and pain. I'm of the people that sustains that when we are stagnant in our anger and we remain irate and upset against our parents, the only thing we accomplish is blaming them for our defects of how we did in life, our own misfortunes, but that anger against our parents deviates the attention for the real matters that need healing, and those lie within us, not within our parents. So my guide for this type of message is always what Exodus says: honor your mother and your father so that you do well, so that you may have a long life. That's always my guide, yes? Always. So though I share my dysfunction, my interest is not to dishonor my parents. I speak about my parents with the same respect and grace as to what I would expect my children to speak about me. Obviously, I'm sure they'll speak about my defects, but I want them to speak with the grace that I used to speak about my parents. I'm not upset at them. I honored them as much as I could until the last moment, and all that I could do within my own strength, with what my mind gave me, so I don't have any pending debts. I don't have any remaining payments. And though my parents no longer live on this side of the sun, they live on the other side of the sun, I'm sure that they would be in agreement with all that I am saying and what I'm about to say to you now. My purpose is to share the things that I learned by blows so that you don't have to learn in the same way. Are we ready for that? Yes or no? All right. The majority of our parents also didn't receive the adequate upbringing on behalf of their parents. I'm sure they didn't have a model that taught them to build safe and secure homes that are healthy. They didn't have a model that taught them to create stable homes. They inherited brokenness from their own parents. I wonder how far back this dysfunction goes, how many generations back it goes. But then they weren't able to break that cycle, and they passed that brokenness onto their children, in other words, us. And that puts us at risk of repeating the same ecosystem, of doing the same thing with our children without realizing. I'm not telling you that you're a bad mother or a bad father. What I'm saying is that you can repeat certain cycles without even realizing. How can you bring that intergenerational dysfunction to a halt? Well, firstly, we have to identify our own wounds from our childhood. That's why I began by sharing the story of this woman that I met, because she couldn't identify the pain that she was dragging. When you identify your own wounds, you identify them and say, oh, I'm like this. I tend to act in this way. My character is always inclined this way because of what happened to me. When you identify it, you don't victimize yourself. A priori, what you do is you don't pass those wounds to your own children. We have to understand what was wrong, because the diagnosis always precedes the treatment. You cannot apply a treatment. This would be easier if at any church they said to you, oh, come to the altar, receive the anointing, you're a new creation. Yeah, but you continue to carry your traumas. You have the same mother, the same father, and the worst of cases, the same mother-in-law. So it's not by osmosis. It's not magic. In a healthy home, first let me make this clear, because I know that I still see some looks from people thinking, oh, well, this message wasn't for me. The truth is that I was brought up by the Ingalls. But this goes for those that were brought up by the Simpsons. But I'm going to make it clear, because if not, it seems like this message is always for someone else. Parents should, in a healthy home, should provide 4 essential foundations. We should have had this, and these 4 pillars are what we should be giving to our children. Said by all psychologists, all sociologists: love, structure, roots, and wings. Love, structure, roots, and wings. This is what we should have had to be able to say, oh, I made it to adult life healthy. Love produces the feeling that we are valuable. Structure helps us to know limits. The structure of our childhood gives us limits for our adult life. Roots offer us stability to grow a lot. And wings prepare us to be responsible adults. It seems like a childish equation, but it's very profound, very profound. If you grew up in a home full of love, if you felt very valued from a young age, if you felt very, very, very valued, if they made you feel it, if they verbalized it, if you say, oh yeah, I felt loved because I never lacked food. No, if they verbalized it the way a child needs, a child doesn't understand the financial language. Oh, I never lacked shoes. Yeah, but besides that, we need them to verbalize what they feel. Did they say to you, I love you, I believe in you? Did they hug you out of nowhere to tell you, oh, I feel proud of you, son, I feel proud of you, daughter, in a constant way? Did your parents encourage you with words of encouragement, affection, respect, value, validation, and approval? This is love. And it's likely that you also perceived a lot of physical affection. They hugged you, they embraced you. Now, that's what it means to grow up in a home of love. Besides that, if you were brought up in a home that had structure, if your parents were very predictable, if you always knew where you stood, what the rules of the house were, if you didn't have to ask, if they were just implicit, you knew what the limits were and what to expect if you disobeyed. A bad grade from school, you knew what would await you at home. You even knew the sermon that they would give you. That structure, in one way or another, gave you confidence for life. But in a healthy home, you don't just find love and structure, but also roots. Roots build up character. Roots are the moral values that are learned at home long before you go to elementary school. Perseverance, determination, diligence, resilience. You watch your parents and you learn work ethic from them, what it means to wake up early and go to work when they feel like it, and even when they don't feel like it. If you were brought up in a home with deep roots, it doesn't matter how many times you haven't done well at school. You always felt that everything would be okay once you made it back home. Roots mean that your home was a secure place. Your parents made you feel not only secure, but also contained, safe, stable. Nothing could go so wrong that it couldn't be resolved in your home. If you were brought up in a home with deep roots, then you felt firm, sustained, and contained. You didn't go looking around for friends, or you didn't prefer to be at a friend's home or at an aunt's home. You didn't feel more safe at your grandma's house. No, your home had roots, but a healthy home doesn't just need love, structure, and roots, but it also gives wings to its children. They don't leave us or see us as hostages. They see us as children. Parents don't see children as a blank page that they can write whatever they couldn't be. Oh, you're going to be a lawyer because I couldn't finish my career. You're going to be a doctor because I want you to have a diploma on the wall. Parents believe that children are a sort of artificial intelligence where you stuff them with information so that we can later hear what we want to hear. Wings means we see our children as books that we have to decode as independent people. And they help them to find their own academic abilities, sporting abilities, artistic abilities. If you were brought up in a home where they gave you wings, then you felt heard, understood. You were able to express what it was that gave you joy and what didn't give you pleasure, what you didn't want to study because it wasn't for you. You weren't born with that. That gave wind to your wings, and you were guided by the values, the beliefs that they taught you, but you had your own wings to be independent. 4 essential foundations: love, structure, roots, and wings. That is what we should have had to now be healthy adults. With that being said, and having agreed that we're all sick, because I didn't see anyone that said, amen, amen, amen to all 4. No, none of you did. Everything I just said was not for you to rejoice, but for you to know everything that you lacked, everything that I lacked. Because if not, I preach and it's always for someone else. But no, this is for us. For those of us that didn't have love or structure or roots nor wings. Some of us had maybe one. So, but I noticed that no one had all four of these. And let me just tell you what your childhood might have looked like. You don't have to do it publicly, obviously, but I'm sure that you're going to identify with some of these, with these 6 pathologies. Number 1, your parents were passive. In more simple terms, they were not very involved. Maybe they just weren't present. Physically, they were at home, but they were distant. They were never emotionally available. You never connected with them emotionally. I once spoke with an adult woman that said to me, to this day, when I tell my mother something serious, she changes the topic. She made it clear that she would never discuss deep topics with me ever. It's a defense mechanism. Mom, they found a strange lump in my breast and they have to operate on me. Did you know your sister opened up an Instagram? So there are mothers or fathers that create an abyss with their children, and as children we feel it. So if this is true, then your childhood isn't full of happy memories of all the things that you did as a family. No, they left you alone without any direction, and now you realize, especially as you look at your own children, that you were abandoned. I didn't know that I was abandoned until I became a father. When I became a father and I helped my children to bathe and with their homework, I thought, wow, they never helped me with this. I learned to shower on my own. That's why I was so stinky until I was 16. Because no one told me that I had a back and heels, and nobody taught me to use dental floss. No one. I looked like Tarzan's son. And now you might say, but your parents were there. Yeah, but since I was a scare, or the closest thing to a tumor, they allowed me to raise myself, so I felt abandoned. So it's likely that your parents they abandoned you, or they weren't there. Number 2, your parents were literally absent. There are many people here that didn't have mom or dad present. Not because they died or because they were never home. Whether it be due to divorce or death or mental illness or personal decisions, they were physically and emotionally absent. And your parents were so absorbed in their own lives that they didn't have time to give to you. And so you would go to an empty home, prepare your own food. You assumed the responsibility of doing your homework. You would always walk home from school alone. You really can't remember if they ever went to one of your performances or plays. There is no difference between someone addicted to drugs and someone addicted to alcohol or work. These are all addictions. A man once told me a very sad story. He said that his best friend died in a motorcycle accident. In the time where they were studying in high school, he didn't have a helmet. The bike fell over, obviously had trauma in his cranium, and he died in the hospital. And during his funeral, the victim's father, his friend's father, who was a successful businessman, they gave his son everything that, amongst others things, bought him the motorcycle. He came up to him and said, "You were my son's best friend?" And I said, "Yeah." And the father said, "Look, I was so busy building my business that I was never able to get to know him. Can you please tell me something about how he was?" And so there are many of us that come from families like this. Number 3, your parents were permissive. They allowed you to do whatever you wanted except kill, but you could do anything else. And they didn't let you kill because maybe that would bring problems onto them. If not, they might have let you. And though during that moment it was cool, you suffered due to the lack of structure. You didn't know limits. You were brought up without a corral. I had a 10-year-old friend, classmate, whose parents were going through divorce. Back when divorce wasn't common, it was more of a taboo. If they were going through a divorce, they'd try to hide it, right? And since the parents were living separate, in an attempt to compete over their child's affection, they let him buy everything. Whatever mom didn't buy, dad would buy. And so the son speculated and started to extort mom and dad. But they would even let the 10-year-old boy buy pornographic magazines. There was no internet back then. If not, he would have had unrestricted access to the web. Obviously, he took the magazines to school. His dad would buy them. He could stay to sleep over at anyone's home. He was a free soul. We would ask, hey, you don't have to ask permission from your parents? Nope, they let me do whatever I want. He would miss out on school whenever he wanted, of course. As children, we admired him profoundly. We were all hostages compared to him. He would even take cigarette packs in his shirt pocket, but they never punished him. And I saw it. His mother would pick him up from school, and he would light a cigarette as they held hands, walking home together. Not too long ago, in a Facebook group of old classmates, I learned that he was killed by police officers because he was attempting to rob a place. It was predictable that he would end up in this way. He never knew what limits were, so he wouldn't get to know what they were later on in life. Number 4, maybe your parents were always upset or violent. Generally, they were always upset about something, and so their anger was just beneath the surface, ready to burst out. Maybe even when they said something positive to you, their anger would steal the glory, would steal the show. They were always in a bad mood. They would lose their temper very regularly, but the worst part is that you never knew or understood what made them so angry. That's the worst thing. It was walking through a minefield. There are many adults here that as children you walked through a minefield, through quicksand. Not knowing the rules of the game in your home means that you don't have roots. Maybe you had parents that would react disproportionately because of a bad grade, or maybe you tore your jeans because you were playing, and they made you live in fright of that anger. You were like a tied-up puppy that was just waiting for the next blow or physical violence. There are many people that say they would beat me with a belt, with a broom, with a shoe, with a stick, with whatever was at hand, and it would leave you marked. This isn't from 2 centuries ago. This isn't from the medieval times. No, there are many people here that we were literally beat with the belt. And if they were good, they wouldn't hit us with the buckle, but they would still leave marks on us. I remember not being able to wear shorts during the winter because I was embarrassed by the marks and people asking about them. I don't really remember how bad I could have misbehaved to deserve those whips. Now that I'm a father, I say, that wasn't normal. But maybe the discipline in your home was also unpredictable and random according to mom or dad's current mood swing. And so that made you feel like you were always in a minefield, so you preferred to play at a friend's house or grandma's house. Any home was safer than your own. Number 5, your parents were too demanding. Not violent, but demanding, authoritarian, controlling. They never had conversations with you. They gave you orders. They told you to obey without asking questions. They didn't motivate you to think, to question, not even to speak for yourself. And you learn to not ask questions, to not give opinions, to not speak unless spoken to. Do we really believe that we won't carry that into our adult lives? The only way I understand that there are people that congregate with people that punish them, that send them to hell. I don't know what God sees in you because you're the son of Satan. And the people say, hallelujah! I mean, the only thing I can understand is that they had parents just like that. And now they're looking for a pastoral figure that looks similar to their parent. Who likes to be sent to hell every day? I don't understand the legalistic churches that prefer to be punished and disciplined. And they say that's holy doctrine. No, it's just that they've been that way since they were children. When they didn't allow you to be children, when they didn't allow you to be yourself, when they were dominant, manipulative, overpowering. You were afraid to mess up, but when you did things right, they didn't make it known. And you would say, hey, I did this right. Oh, well, that's what corresponds to you. You want me to celebrate you? And maybe they even retained words of affection. Maybe they used them as weapons to manipulate you. I once heard someone say, whatever I did, I can never make my old man happy. There are people that say, no matter what I did, I could never make my dad happy. Ever. 6, your parents denigrated you. They invalidated your emotions with explicit criticism. I've seen it. I've seen people like this interact with their children. If you've had denigrating parents, then you felt that you were a disappointment, as if they always wish that you were never born, and maybe they even told you this, and this constant criticism destroyed your self-esteem. Your mother would say, you're just like your father, you're just like this person, you have the same thing. They would torture you with their contempt and their sarcasm, and some even bring shame to their children for the way that they look. Literally, they would call you fatty, fatso, start to lose weight, you look like a cow. Imagine a parent saying this to you. No, really, that a mother says this to you. It's not funny, because in a child, this causes such a wound that lasts for years. Fatty, big nose, or if you used glasses, they would say 4 eyes. And sometimes they would do this in public. They were so frustrated by their own lives, these parents, that they would let it out on you, and you were their scapegoat, someone that couldn't defend themselves. As adults, we tend to do this. We say things that we wouldn't tolerate, but since we're adults, we can say it. And maybe they even promoted rivalry between siblings because they fabricated the famous proverb, divide and conquer. And this just gave way to jealousy and envy that could have lasted for decades. Why are there parents that do this? They speak against you to your brother. They speak against your brother to you. Oh, you don't know what your brother did to me. You don't know what your sister said. Oh, I can't count on him. He's always busy. And then she would talk about me to my brother. My mother would divide and conquer. As you might imagine, none of us had the childhood that we expected or deserved or what we should have had. I'm sorry for being so explicit, but if I just speed around the bush, the majority of you will say, no, in reality, I didn't have problems, but we all suffered. We just didn't realize it. We thought that the treatment that we were given was the normal treatment, and now, as we've grown up, we realize that that's not true, because we don't want to be like this with our children. That was our normal, but it wasn't actually normal. It was just our normal. My normal was for them to beat me with a belt, for them to speak hate against my brother, for my parents to be absent. They never said anything good to me. It was my normal. I thought I thought every kid lived this way. That's why once you identify the trauma, first you have to mourn over what went wrong. If not, you're speaking to a wall. If not, people will say, if people don't say, oh, I had a problem, or if they say, I didn't have any issues, then they're going to deny it. If denial is trying to forget, mourning is trying to remember. Even if it hurts, denial accumulates the pain. Mourning lets it out. And it doesn't affect our way of being or thinking. Now let's agree. We didn't deserve the wounds that we carried in our childhood. None of us were so bad as children. Even if we were so mischievous, that doesn't mean we deserved what we lived. No, we're not responsible for what happened to us. It was outside of our control. We were children. However, now that we are adults, we are responsible for what happens to us in the future and whatever happens to our children. So we have to heal to be able to give a healthy home to our children. It's never too late to heal. Never. Even though some say, oh, well, I already raised my children. It doesn't matter. Because you could be a toxic grandmother. You could be a toxic grandfather. It's the principle that we have to heal. First, as they say, first we have to put on our oxygen mask before we try to help others. These are the safety instructions before commercial airplanes take off. If the masks come down, put yours on first and then help out the child. So this is what we have to do first. We cannot heal our children if we're still sick. No one can change what happened to us. That's the truth. We're not going to regress to try and change the past because time machines don't exist. Our parents are responsible for having hurt us, whether they did it consciously or unconsciously. Maybe our parents are alive, maybe they're not. Maybe we have a good relationship with them, maybe we don't. Maybe our relationship with our parents is very civilized, maybe not. Because for a relationship to be civilized, both ends need to be civilized. However, when they treat us in an uncivilized way, you tend to take a step back and you say, no, I don't want to speak to them. I don't want to call. I don't want to go. Every Thanksgiving is a problem. Every Christmas is chaos. So whatever relationship we have with our parents, it's likely that we may not want to forgive. That's the point. But the point is that forgiving doesn't mean we're discarding what they did. Forgiving doesn't mean that we pretend they never hurt us. That's not forgiveness. That's amnesia. After all, if no one ever did anything wrong, there would be no need for forgiveness. Forgiveness is when someone did something against us. If not, forgiveness lacks meaning and sense. To forgive, you have to recognize that they did something wrong. If not, we cannot forgive anything. If not, it's like, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. It's not forgiveness. You have to forgive with all that means when you recognize that they hurt you. It's making a conscious decision of no longer being angry at our parents, but I'm also speaking about amnesty. I once told you that amnesty is a term that is often used in the political sphere. It comes from the same root that the word amnesia comes from. It means forgetting the crime. Forgetting the crime. The felony. According to the dictionary, amnesty is forgetting the crime, which removes the responsibility from the author of the crime. So someone that has received amnesty, it's as if they never committed the crime. I'm not saying, nor is God saying, offer amnesty. Amnesty is not remembering. Now, what I'm doing right now is sifting so that we can remember. If not, we can't truly forgive. I'm not proposing amnesty. I'm speaking about forgiveness. I'm speaking about an act of grace. I'm speaking about what the Lord did for us on the cross. Being aware of our sin, He decided to forgive us. That is forgiveness, yes? Number one. Though they don't deserve it. That's why it's such a difficult commandment to follow, and the only one that comes with a promise. The Bible doesn't say in the Ten Commandments, you shall not murder, and you'll have very great skin into your old age. Do not commit adultery so that you can have great blood flow. No, there are no promises. Just do not murder, and that's it. You won't have other gods before me, period. The only one that comes with a promise is honor your mother and your father so that you can be blessed in all that you do and have a long life. Why should it have a reward? Well, it might be the most difficult commandment to keep. It's not the smoothest of the commandments. It's not the most innocuous one. It's the most difficult one. I've been speaking about the possible homes that we've had for 20-25 minutes, and we all identify with these examples. So I'm not saying let's ignore what they did, nor am I telling you that with forgiveness it's enough to be able to erase all these years of pain. No, it won't. They won't erase magically. However, there is no forgiveness. There is no forgiveness if there is no true grace. The future with our children and our grandchildren will remain wrapped up in the same dysfunctional cycle, and that'll continue. And then in 100 years, when we're no longer here, our children are going to complain about the upbringing that we provided them. They're going to say, my dad was absent, he was violent. The same things we're saying, and we have to cut it. One time, Peter asked Jesus, Lord, how many times do I have to forgive someone that sins against me? And he asks, what, 7 times? What makes Peter's question interesting is that the rabbis back in those days taught that you had to forgive a person of a sin up to 3 times. After 3 times, they're taking you as an idiot. After 3 times of forgiving them over the same sin, you had no obligation to forgive that person. It's the original law of the Hebrews of the 3 errors. However, Jesus' answer was different. He said, no, not 7. 70. The Lord was using hyperbole with the purpose of abolishing the law of the 3 errors, and that it's out of play. The Lord said, I forgive because I have the culture and the essence of forgiveness, not because they deserve my forgiveness. So for our own emotional and spiritual health, we have to forgive whether they are repentant or not. On the Sermon of the Mount, the Lord taught us to pray, and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And he adds later, for if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, and let me add, if you do not forgive your mother, your father, even if your father had a triple life, then neither will your Father forgive your trespasses, because there is no scale of sin to the Lord. Whatever your father or mother did is not worse to how you live your life now, how I live my life today. For the Lord, the gospel is on the same list as the killer, the murderer. Catholicism is the one that has red sins, orange sins, white sins, and black. No, but not for us. The Lord doesn't have levels of sin. We sin against the Lord with jealousy and envy, so we're no better than our parents. Now, why is forgiveness so important? Because when we don't forgive, we are the ones that suffer. My father never suffered. He ended up in a clinic saying, I don't know why my grandchildren don't visit me if I was such a great man. Oh, he never suffered. He didn't have a blind spot. He was Stevie Wonder mixed with Andrea Bocelli. And he was bulletproof. I once said to him, Dad, do you remember that when you were young, you threw out your grandkids and said, I don't want anyone here, I want to take a nap. And he said, when did I do that? And I said, okay. So who suffers? The grandchildren, the children. Look at what this man did to me. So the lack of forgiveness is like a festering wound that we try to cover up, but then it gets infected. Nelson Mandela, who put up with racial segregation and in the end became president of South Africa, he summarized and said, resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So forgiving is a decision, a rational decision. It's not a feeling, it's an act of will. So if they abused us, if they hurt us, it's not something that you expect to feel. We're never going to feel like forgiving them. It's not, oh, I felt like forgiving today. No, so then they didn't hurt you seriously enough. That's not way to feel like forgiving. We won't have the desire to forgive. I've had to forgive even without wanting to, without the desire. And when you make the decision to forgive, then it can take a long time to heal your emotions and feelings. Oh, but I decide to forgive. I won't fester with the wound anymore. It's never the opposite. You never heal your emotions to then forgive. No. It'll take you a lifetime, and those feelings will never be healed. I've seen old people that are bitter and resentful die in this way. I've accompanied old people. I'm talking about 97-year-old people that are bitter. And I ask, really? With imminent death, yes, they continue to hate the child that they don't speak to or the partner that scammed them. Yeah, because they're waiting to feel. So healing never comes. Failures, the failures of my parents weren't just their own failures. Don't think that my parents, your parents were an isolated case. No, on the contrary, my parents, for example, had their own wounds. They walked with their own limps, poor people. The man that never hugged me, he never told me that he loved me when I was little, well, he was never hugged by his own father. Nor did he have the certainty of the love of his mother when he was little. In conversations with my grandma, my father's mother, the German grandmother, I realized what he went through. My father's father died when he was 9 years old. So he had to abandon school, 4th grade, elementary school, because his mother sent him out to work with no shoes. He had no sandals, nothing, no footwear. Since he was the oldest of his siblings, his mother treated him like an adult. So he took on his father's burden at the age of 9. Poor guy. Didn't know how to read or write. But he didn't know how to show love. How could he know how to show love if he got sent to work at the age of 9? Not even to earn a wage, but just for food. Of course, my father needed help, but he didn't know how to ask for that help. That was his normal. So now, at the distance, for him having patted me on the back, oh, that should be written in heaven. My father had good intentions, but he didn't have examples of being a gentleman or of a healthy home. He never saw the model of what it means to be a father. My mother, much less. At her own father's funeral, there were 2 widows in front of the coffin. This happened often before social media. And the 2 widows, each one came with their children, and there my mother found out that she had a bunch of siblings. There she found out that man had 2 homes, and after that, many more homes would be discovered. That grandfather of mine had like a multiverse. My mother met her siblings at her father's funeral, so what I'm trying to say is that my parents had to learn to be parents. They got married at 19. Does someone here have an 18 or 19-year-old child? They're kids. Don't be offended, but they're kids. What does a mother know when she's left pregnant at 20? Oh, I learned to be a mother. No, she might have learned to make love and how to give birth, but that doesn't qualify her as a mother. You make a path as you go, Joan Manuel Serrat would say. And I don't think that our parents decided to be bad parents. No, nobody decided to fail. Maybe they tried and they couldn't do it. Maybe they didn't put in the effort. But whatever the case may be, they didn't receive the education that they needed to be good parents. And so what happens when people don't receive what they're expecting to receive? People can't give from what they don't have. My father wasn't an affectionate man that couldn't give me affection, because if not, then now I'd be very, very bitter. I'm healed because I understood, how could my father give affection if he didn't even know what a hug from his mother was? So if our parents brought us up in a loving way, then most likely they were brought up in a loving way. But if not, it's because they were not loved. No one showed them how to love or how to establish structure, how to set roots, how to give wings to their children. Winston Churchill said, those that don't learn from history are condemned to repeat it. And this doesn't just apply to politics, but also families. We have to learn. However, now that we consider what happened to our parents, we can break the chain, the cycle. We have to put in the effort to extend grace to our parents for their errors, the same way we receive grace for our errors. Many of the wounds from my childhood have now been healed, but I can affirm that I still have some, I call residual symptoms that make me vulnerable to certain emotional outbursts. In simple terms, I have mood swings, but we all have emotional limps. A limp is a good metaphor for what is left of us after the healing comes. Like a damaged limb that gets healed, but you're left with a physical limp. In the same way, a severely damaged soul is left with a certain limp. An emotional limp, right? We're left with an emotional limp. It's that residual effect of the wounds from our childhood. We find them each and every day in our adult lives with something that reminds us of that. And we tend to react before people or situations that remind us of these old wounds. The clearest symptom of my limp is, for example, that I'm very propense to seeing everything through the lens of abandonment. And so my lowest moments, the darkest moments of my soul were when I felt excluded, abandoned, a tumor, underestimated, when my opinions were shut out, or they would say to me, shut your mouth, you don't know anything. So I'm always tempted to think, oh, they don't want me, they don't like me, even in my adult life. And as an act of self-reflection of defense, I say, well, I didn't want that anyways. And so the limp that I was left with explains why I always kept such a small, intimate circle. Why I didn't have dozens of friends. I'm never seated at long tables with 50 people like many people might like. I always tried to keep my small circle as small as possible, made up of people that I felt wouldn't judge me, wouldn't betray me, wouldn't abandon me. Even when we have occasional conflicts, I've never had more than 3 or 4 friends, and it's not because I'm a secretive guy. No, the pain of abandonment makes me alert. And so people that see me might say, oh, well, you're a damaged product. And I can say the same about you. We're all damaged products. You are too. But here's what I believe. Here's what I think. Some might say that they're errant, they're hurt, but here's what I think. I heard a story of a group of women that were reading Malachi 3:2, and the verse where they refer to Jesus as the embracing fire that refines. And these women, to satisfy their curiosity, they made an agreement with the refiner to see him work. And the refiner took the hard silver and placed it in the hottest part of the flame, explaining that it was essential to burn out, to remove the impurities. And the woman looked at him and asked, well, do you have to stay here, sitting here, while it burns? And the refiner said, oh, yes, I have to, because if I don't do it, then the refinement process can go beyond what's convenient, and it'll destroy the silver. And there, Malachi 3:2 came to the woman's mind, where it says,
Después de observar por un tiempo, le preguntó, ¿cómo sabe cuando la plata está apropiadamente refinada? Eso es simple, dijo el orfebre.
The refiner's fire will refine the impurities. And the woman asked, when do you know that when the job is done? And the refiner said, well, when I can see my reflection in the silver because it's removed all the impurities, that's when I know the job is done. And in James 1:2, it says, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. And so you and I, we can go through any amount of trials. We can manage them if we think that it has a superior purpose. I began to heal when I understood that everything that happened to me as a child had a purpose for today as I stand before you. The famous Tech Johnson, a pilot for Boeing, had a plaque outside of his office that said, a trial is worth way more than opinions. And so trials help us to see if we're complete and perfect. And for Jesus to be able to be reflected in our lives, we had to have gone through all that in our childhood. We're part of the last generation that has suffered a lot. But that wasn't on purpose because the Lord boasts about our suffering. No, He wanted to send medics and doctors out into the world that could understand other people's pain with empathy. So to summarize, instead of trying to hide the limp, recognize it with dignity. There's joy in accepting that the limp is normal and that it's beautiful. We're part of the brotherhood of the twisted trunks. Do we agree, yes or no? Dysfunction is so common that there's no need to use the scarlet letter of shame or stigma. No, on the contrary, vulnerability allows the rest to see our limp, and it gives people a reason to identify with us at a more personal level. If I stood up here to speak about how perfect my family was, then no one would identify. If we don't visit the emotional nucleus of our lives, if we don't look back at our childhood, our forgiveness will always be incomplete. Always. Accepting that we may have an emotional limp will not heal us, but it will give us power over that pain. There's a book called The Body Keeps Count, a bestseller in the New York Times. The Body Keeps Count. The author tells the story of a nurse, 28-year-old nurse, who went to see a doctor because she had a problem with obesity. She was 408 pounds, and the woman identified obesity as her problem. But the visible problems are almost never the root of the matter. The woman had a long history of physical abuse on behalf of her father, and that caused a repressed pain. How did she deal with the pain? She would eat whenever she was awake. She would eat and eat and eat and eat. Obesity in her was a defense mechanism to keep her distant from others, especially men. Eating was the only defense mechanism that she had. And each one of us has a personal repertoire of defense mechanisms. Some, like this woman, eat to become invisible. Others drink to drown out their shames. Others are always angry so no one gets close. Trauma isn't the same for all of us, but healing begins with the courageous decision to deal with the pain. Firstly, you have to recognize that the wound exists, that it was important, and that it still hurts. Do we agree, yes or no? And only then can we forgive and be free. And listen, and giving our children the essential foundations that we lacked: love, structure, roots, and wings. And not only will we heal, but we'll also break the dysfunctional family cycle, and will help all those that ever hid their pain under the rose. Let's celebrate the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. We exalt you, King! We exalt you, King of Kings! Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Everyone, everyone, everyone. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Celebrate the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. God has spoken today. The Lord has spoken today. Blessed are you. We exalt you. Everyone, 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 everyone. We exalt you, King of Kings. Lord of Lords. Whoa. More, more, more. Presence of the Spirit, heal us. Whoa. Holy. Hallelujah. Lift up your hands to heaven with me. Come on, come on, come on, come on, everyone. Lift up your hands and say, Lord, I need to know now that I'm healing. But to heal, today was merely the diagnosis. The treatment will be longer than expected. You have to be patient. You won't leave here ignoring everything that happened to you in your childhood. That will not happen. That will not happen. You won't leave here ignoring everything that happened to you. But you'll leave here making the decision, if you wish it so, the intentional decision to forgive. Lord, forgive. I want to forgive. I want to heal. I want to forgive as I've been forgiven. Whoa, everyone. I want to forgive just as I have been forgiven. I want to begin my healing today. Today, July 20th, may today be the day in which we let go of that girl that suffers, that wounded boy. Allow them to leave. I know that as adults, we're just children that survived, living in adult bodies. But when I say let them go, I'm saying let the pain go. Let the wounds go. Let those moments of loneliness go when you were in your little crib, in your bed, scared to death. As an adult, say, Lord, now I look forward, and whether they're alive or not, whether I have a civilized relationship with them or not, I'm going to forgive. This may be one of the most spiritual sermons that we'll ever hear. It doesn't sound more spiritual than empowerment or anointing or the fire, receive tongues now. But what good is all that in wounded people, in resentful, bitter people? People that cannot heal. There are limbs that we're going to have with us for the rest of our lives. But I've decided, almost at my age of 30-something, that I'll never be a bitter old man. I will never, ever, ever transmit hate to my children or grandchildren. I'll never be like those people that curse what could have been but never was. But I want to bless until my last day. I want to look like Juan Carlos Ortiz, who used to say about everyone, oh, well, my friend, if we don't love him, who's going to love him? And I would think, what healing you have to possess to be able to give and provide that grace. Everyone, come on. It's the Holy Spirit who's now healing, touching these wounds. Whoa, impressive. Everyone, 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 everyone. Receive this healing now. Receive this embalmment from the Spirit. May the Lord touch us and heal us. May He bless us. May He fill us. Presence of the Holy Spirit. The Lord loves you so much. How can He not love you if He has you sculpted in His hands? There are people from all over the world connecting with us now, healing in their homes. After some months, I realized that I couldn't cry when my mother passed, not because I didn't have emotions, but because in reality, I hadn't forgiven the abandonment, and so I forgave her. And I began to mourn. It was marvelous, because I allowed myself to cry. I allowed myself to be myself. I allowed myself to be sad for some days, for some months, and it's fine. God gave us tear ducts so that everyone can see when we're sad and so that we don't hide it. So, let's forgive even though they're on the other side of the sun or in another country. Let's forgive even if we don't see them. Let's forgive those that abandon us. The dysfunctional father, the abuser, the violent one. Lord, today I decide to forgive. No more venom in my life, no more toxicity. I beg you, Lord, that we live clean. Lord, I've spoken what I believe you told me to tell your people. I haven't added, I haven't removed what I believe your revelation was. I ask you to bless them, to touch them. You fill them with your grace and your favor. Father, double portion of your Spirit now upon them. Heal them. Heal us so that we can finish this month of July traveling lightly, prosperous, blessed, so that we may not pass on this pain to our own, so that we may cut any intergenerational chain, so that we may begin a new time and a new life. Father, thank you. I bless those that are here now so that we can have a great week, a great work week. And may we be prosperous, blessed in the body, in the soul, and in the spirit. Amen and amen. Glory to Jesus. May God bless you. May He keep you. Bye, 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 bye. May the Lord make His face shine on you. That applause is to the Lord of Lords. And at home. Bye. Until next time. Blessing.